Week 9 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few running backs I looked at off the wire this week. So this week, not much on the waiver wire of guys who really broke out and put up numbers, but here's a few guys that can maybe help fantasy owners in the next few weeks. First guy is Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. So Darrell Henderson, we know he's back with the Rams a few weeks ago with the injuries to Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers. And the last 2 weeks, he's been serviceable and leading the backfield in carries. Week 7 versus Pittsburgh, 18 carries, 61 rush yards, a touchdown, a catch 5 yards. In Week 8, in a blowout loss at the Dallas Cowboys, 12 carries, 31 yards, but he had 3 catches, 54 yards in that one. So Week 9 here, good matchup at the Packers that give up the third most fantasy points to running backs on the season. So right now, Henderson, he might only be usable one more week, and Kyren Williams, he should be ready for Week 11, supposedly, to come back off injured reserve. So anyway, right now, Darrell Henderson, like I said, he's out there in 55% of fantasy leagues. He's a starting running back for this Ram team. And this Ram team, after getting embarrassed versus the Cowboys, I think come back and have a decent game. And like I said, Henderson's had double-digit fantasy games the last 2 weeks. So he's a decent pickup this week. The next guy is Amari DiMercito of the Arizona Cardinals. So DiMercito, he got a huge workload, even though he didn't do much with it. 20 carries, 78 yards in that game versus the Baltimore Ravens. And they did fight to the end with this Cardinal team, but obviously couldn't come out with the victory. So DiMercito, the last 2 weeks, he's had 33 carries, which is a solid number. Young running back out of the backfield, could catch the football as well. I know he's not that great of an intriguing option, but he is a starting running back in the league, and he is available in 64% of fantasy leagues. I know not the greatest of matchups as well in Week 9 here at the Cleveland Browns, but right now, if you need a back with just some depth piece, DiMercito's in there this week. Next back's Devin Singletary of the Houston Texans. So like I said, this week there's not much on the waiver wire. No injuries or no big breakout performance by anyone. But anyway, Devin Singletary, him and Dameon Pierce, looks like they're 50-50 split for the most part. And Dameon Pierce, he just hasn't gotten anything going. So Singletary, once again, in Week 8, had a decent workload. 10 carries, 30 yards, 2 catches, 13 yards at the Panthers. And coming up, middle of the pack matchup versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So like I said, Dameon Pierce hasn't been the answer over there for this Houston Texan team, even though I thought he was going to be. But right now, with touches with him and Singletary, 50-50 split. He had 12 carries, 46 yards, and 12 total touches with 2 catches for Devin Singletary. So right now, while Singletary, he's out there in tons of fantasy leagues at 80%. He possibly could get even a larger role and be the starting back as the weeks go on. The next back's Pierre Strong Jr. of the Cleveland Browns. So Pierre Strong, he had a decent workload. We know Jerome Ford wasn't 100%. Kareem Hunt, obviously, he had the goal line touchdown and had a good workload as well. But Strong, he had rushed pretty well. 10 carries, 41 yards, and a catch for 41 yards. So right now, obviously, this Brown team, a tough loss, 24-20 in the closing seconds of that ball game at the Seattle Seahawks. But Pierre Strong, he put in a decent performance, like I said, available out there in 90% of fantasy leagues, and he's getting work. I'm not saying he's going to take the reins in that backfield with Kareem Hunt, and Jerome Ford surprisingly did play, but obviously not at 100%. But anyway, if you're looking for a guy that's going to get some work, and possibly as the year goes on, if another injury happens, he's more of a stash option than anything is Strong, and available in 90% of fantasy leagues. And the final running back I looked at off the wire this week is Tajay Spears of the Tennessee Titans. So Spears, if Derrick Henry gets traded, even though pretty much there's rumors coming out saying it's not going to happen before the deadline here in the next couple days. But anyway, Tajay Spears, he's one of the best handcuffs in the league, available in 50% of fantasy leagues. The Titans had their bye week come up, and he's the passing downs back. And there's some games where he's outsnapped Derrick Henry by a lot. So right now is a stash and a guy with a potential to be a top 15 back if anything happens to Henry, if he gets traded or an injury. He's a good stash this week. So that's a few running backs I looked at off the wire. Even though it was thin this week, you never know with some of these guys for Week 9 of the fantasy football season.